Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands and Ghost Recon Breakpoint are the two newest games in the series, with Wildlands releasing in 2017 and Breakpoint 2 years later in 2019. Both games had pretty tough launches for a ton of reasons, but in both cases Ubisoft committed to years of updates to get the games into a state that they deserved. In early 2022, Breakpoint received its final update, so I believe it's now time to put both of these games to the test by comparing all their different aspects, to see which one you should buy or go back to in 2022 and beyond. So first up, a quick overview of the stories, as this is what the whole experience revolves around. Wildlands is set in a drug-ridden Bolivia, where your goal is to dismantle the cartel. You'll work through all stems of their operation, taking out major targets along the way, with your end goal being the drug lord El Sueño. Ghost Recon Breakpoint, however, is set in the future, 6 years after, when you crash land on a dystopian tech-controlled island that's been taken over and cut off from the rest of the world. Here your goal is to find out what happened and then take down those behind it. With one of the latest updates, we also got Operation Motherland, a whole new storyline where your mission is now to take control of the island. Now you'll play through these stories in each game's open world, and both are really impressive overall. Bolivia in Wildlands is depicted beautifully, and while it has some impressive landscape variety, Breakpoint just turns it up a notch with huge mountain ranges, tropical jungles and even swamps, just to name a few. And if you can't already imagine, this makes a huge difference to how you have to approach combat in each respective region. The highlight for Bolivia is instead its atmosphere, because the attention to detail across this map makes it seriously immersive, more so than Breakpoint by quite a margin. Things like building designs, NPCs and villages, and even the native sounding music on the radios really just bring it to life, which is something that doesn't really happen a lot in Breakpoint. Arguably, Breakpoint kind of shot itself in the foot there, because it needs to have a good sense of seclusion and isolation to work with its storyline. This pretty much leads to a game world that feels very lifeless unless you're in combat. Now before we move on to the gameplay, this video has been sponsored by the one and only Raid Shadow Legends. Raid now features a ton of champions with over 600, all coming from different factions. My favourite faction is the High Elves. Their backstory is pretty awesome. Their homeland, Aravia, has been around for thousands of years, surviving the fall of a Lissaman Empire, helping humans form civilizations and defeating the Orcs when they formed a huge horde and attacked the continent. Things got twisted when Siroth, the Lord of Darkness, convinced a bunch of elves to go evil and attack the kingdom. The civil war nearly ended the elves, but Aravia survived, rebuilt, and it's now stronger than ever. One of the coolest elves champions is Ethos, AoE Nukers. He's got two powerful AoE attacks, one that hits hard and places a weaken debuff, and one that hits even harder and always crits. So what's new in Raid? Well, this month Raid's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities, including Forge Pass Season 3, with some amazing rewards on offer, including a limited edition artifact set. If that's not enough, Raid's bringing out some new champions along with some awesome champion skins from Adam Ceres. The big news though is that Raid is giving everybody's favourite champion the upgrade he deserves. You might have seen his struggle for awesomeness in some of Raid's hilarious videos, but finally Death Knight is becoming a legendary champion. It's something we've all been waiting for, and we can't wait to see how Ultimate Death Knight turns out. This is the best time to get started with Raid, and if you click the link in the description or scan the QR code here on screen, you'll get some unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, an XP boost and an ancient shard, so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in game. All this treasure will be waiting for you here. So now onto the gameplay, where in terms of raw mechanics, Breakpoint is definitely ahead. Everything from the movement and its animations to the gun handling does just feel slicker in Breakpoint. There's nothing wrong with any of this in Wildlands, but Breakpoint feels like a noticeably better evolution. Another advantage of Breakpoint is its gameplay customization. I mentioned earlier that the game had a rough launch, and part of the way Ubisoft addressed this in Breakpoint was by letting players really fine-tune lots of the game elements. Now this of course includes things like HUD decluttering and gameplay difficulty, but also the ability to turn on or off features like the controversial gear score system and the much hated drones. This ultimately brought the experience much more in line with Wildlands, which in terms of those aforementioned elements is a very good thing. The difficulty settings I mentioned are also incredibly detailed in Breakpoint, which lets you really tune the game for how you want to play it, right down to tiny details like ammo loss on reload. It's small things like this that can really make a difference for certain playstyles, especially if you're someone looking for a hardcore military shooter. Now in terms of gameplay features, there are unsurprisingly lots of similarities, but some big differences. The standout feature in Wildlands that we don't get in Breakpoint are the rebel forces. Throughout the map you can tag supplies for the rebels and in return gain access to their services, which level up as you do more. This lets you call in vehicles, including helicopters eventually, set up diversions, guide mortar fire and get some backup soldiers to come and fight with you. Now these things won't fit every playstyle, but for a lot of people it will add depth when approaching a base or large mission, as it just gives you a lot more options. Once again, the story of Breakpoint means a feature in this form just wouldn't work, at least not in the main story. With Operation Motherland though, we do get the ability to fight alongside rebel forces, just not with anywhere near the same levels of versatility as in Wildlands. On the other hand though, Breakpoint gets much more in-depth health and survival options. Depending on your Ghost experience settings, you can get properly injured by a hit, causing you to limp, slowing down movement. To heal yourself, you can use bandages or syringes, which can be set to expendable, therefore you'll need to craft. There's also an optional stamina system where you'll have to drink water to replenish it by getting to a water source or filling up and then drinking from your canteen. Breakpoint also has a bit of a hunting system which comes into play with the crafting, but it's not very well developed. Now these things definitely don't by any means make Breakpoint a survival game, and to be clear, neither of these two properly are, but when you do have to keep half an eye on resources and consumables, it can feel a bit more realistic. Both games also have the AI teammates, but in Breakpoint you can have a few more options, with the ability to choose how many of them you take with you, and also their weapons, which cleverly affects the way in which they're going to play with you. So now on to another aspect of the gameplay, the missions. For Ghost Recon Wildlands, this is a big strong point. It has loads of well-designed missions that integrate nicely with its storyline, and it makes really good use of its map too, one of my favourite being an enemy base that's set up in mining tunnels, a very different challenge to clear. The way the missions are set out are also really good. Each area of the map is responsible for a different part of the cartel's operation, and therefore each string of missions and targets are in a relatively nearby proximity, something that definitely can't be said about Breakpoint, at least in its main story. Much of the story in Wildlands is also delivered by CIA-style briefings of your major targets, which really gets you amped up to go into the next set of missions, and also gives them a sense of purpose. Therefore, even if the game takes you off on a bit of a tangent before you get to that final job, it keeps you nice and focused. Sadly, with Breakpoint there's a few key things holding the main storyline back, with the big one being the repetitiveness of the base clearing missions. Now of course, base clearing is a very much wanted and necessary type of mission in a game like this, but Breakpoint has a stupidly high number of them, especially in the middle of the main story where it feels like they're just trying to burn some of your time. Now don't get me wrong, there are some great missions just like there are in Wildlands, just a much lower proportion when you add in all that base clearing. Somewhat coming to save this though is the very strong gunplay that we talked about earlier. Without this, getting 3 or 4 base clearing missions in a row would be completely unbearable. The map does also do its bit, with the diversity helping to at least change the views while you're clearing all those bases, but one thing that doesn't help are the travel times. Unlike Wildlands, the map isn't any way split up in that main story, so missions are almost always very far away, leading to quite boring long journeys in helicopters. Thankfully though, Ubisofts seem to have learnt their lesson for Operation Motherland. To remind you, this is the secondary storyline that's been added post-launch, and in this mode you have a very Wildlands-esque map segmentation. Thank God for that. Where Breakpoint does once again claw back some ground though is the customization. Both games have very comprehensive character and gun customization, but Breakpoint has the greater variety and number of options in most cases. The menu for customizing your gun also makes it a much slicker experience in Breakpoint, unlike their main menus, which are absolute shit. No more needs to be said. Another department where Breakpoint makes up for some of its downfalls are its graphics, because this game is absolutely stunning. When compared with Wildlands, every aspect of graphical detail has been improved upon, but more notably it can also be played at 60 frames per second on consoles, whereas Wildlands is stuck at 30 even at next gen. This makes quite a big difference, especially when playing back to back, making it quite apparent that Wildlands is the older feeling game. Overall then, Ghost Recon Wildlands and Breakpoint are both very much worth playing. Thanks to updates, Breakpoint is now much more comparable, however there remain prominent strengths and weaknesses that should dictate which one you'll buy. With Wildlands you get what you get, and that is an impressively well-rounded game with good missions, story and the ability to play offline. If any of those 3 things are a priority for you, it's the game to go for. On the other hand, if you know you'll benefit from the much deeper gameplay customization of Breakpoint, maybe you want to play more hardcore as a hyper-realistic shooter, or if you really value gunplay and don't mind lots of base clearing, Breakpoint definitely has more to offer for you. And make sure you play through Operation Motherland after the main story. It's better in a lot of ways, even if it isn't quite as story driven. So that's all for this video. If you have enjoyed it or found it useful, then a like or even a sub would be absolutely amazing. But that's everything, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.